Good afternoon, everybody. Just starting the webinar for NHS England supporting our newly qualified nurses into employment. Thanks for coming along today. Just got quite a few people in the lobby, so I'm just making sure that we've got everyone added. And we will get started shortly. Okie doke, that looks like everyone's in the room. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. As you can see, this is our nursing employment support webinar for the 15th of July, today's date there. I'm just going to do a very quick introduction because we've got some excellent guest speakers who were just waiting on the call to come in and do their presentations. So I'm just going to give a very quick session overview, and this is just a heads up for you all that the webinar will be recorded, and that's to make sure that we've got a copy that you can all get afterwards, along with any of the other presentations, additional career support resources, leaflets that we've got, anything like that. We're going to make sure you get at the end. People will be muted and microphones off during the call to give the presenters time to speak, but there is going to be time for question and answer sessions after each presentation. Please put your questions into the chat box and we'll pick them up as we go along. Some of the questions that you may ask, if they're very specific or we need to go away and find out a bit more information before getting back to you with a full answer, we will do so. So if we do take your answers away, questions away, we will provide answers afterwards. The email that you've registered for this session with, we're only going to use that to share our updates, recordings of the presentation, etc., or any feedback. If you'd like to opt out, I've got the Nursing North email address on there if you don't want any further correspondence from us, but it will only be relating to this session. And we understand that at this moment in time, finding your first nursing role is challenging. So we're here to support you with as much advice and guidance as we can. And as I say, we've got the excellent guest speakers on today that are hopefully going to provide you some help in showcasing different opportunities in nursing across various sectors to hopefully find something out in your local area. We are covering primarily the North East, Yorkshire and North Cumbria for this area, but we are aware there will be other people from further afield. You're more than welcome, and this advice and guidance will be relevant to you as well, but apologies if we do just touch on some things that are very specific to region from there as well. So that's the end of my introductory spiel. As I say, put things in the chat if there's any questions or queries. We'll be monitoring that as we go along, and I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, Emma Thompson.
Hello everybody. I just share my screen when Paul's stopped sharing his. It's lovely, thank you. Lovely, great. So you should be able to see my screen now. My name's Emma Thompson and I'm the Nursing Director for the South Yorkshire Primary Care Workforce and Training Hub. And I've been asked to talk to you a little bit today about what it's like to have a general practice nursing career and what it's like to come in as a newly qualified nurse into general practice. So really happy to answer any questions you've got. Pop things in the chat. Paul's going to gather them up and I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes and then we're going to have some time doing a bit of question and answer before the next speaker comes on. So general practice, sometimes in university I'm aware that still people are told that they have to have a certain number of years experience in secondary care before coming into primary care and into general practice. That has now changed absolutely, and we welcome newly qualified nurses into general practice across the whole region. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what is it, what is general practice. I know it's very difficult to get a placement in general practice, so you may not all be aware what it's like to work in that arena. So primary care is the front door of the NHS. To give you an idea of what it consists of, there's 300 million consultations happen in primary care in a year. So that primary care includes general practice, but also dentistry, community pharmacy and optometry as well. To give you a comparison, in A&E, we have 23 million visits to A&E each year. So there's lots and lots of activity in primary care, and it really is the front door. It's the first place that people come. What is it like to be a general practice nurse? And I'm going through this all very quickly because we haven't got much time, but I'm happy to take this up with people afterwards as well if you'd like to hear more about the role of the practice nurse. But the practice nurse, the role is very, very varied. It's very interesting. There's lots of opportunities to progress. You have quite a lot of autonomy. We have lots of newly qualified nurses in South Yorkshire coming into general practice, and it is a speciality in its own right. Often people say, oh, I think I might be de-skilled if I go and work in general practice. And it's absolutely not the case. It's just the same as if you were to go and work in intensive care, which is where I worked initially. You are skilled up in intensive care. It's the same as if you worked in general practice, you become skilled up in general practice nursing. It takes about a year to train to be a general practice nurse. So yes, you come to us as a newly qualified nurse, but within all the different regions, there are different programs that you will go on to then do your training to become a general practice nurse. And not everybody always appreciates that. So, you know, you can't come as a newly qualified nurse and do a smear, for example. You have to have the right training to do that, to do that procedure. So then there's lots of different things that we do. So we do, for example, in a day, the practice nurse, we may do baby vaccinations. We may do diabetes reviews. We are the experts in all the long-term conditions within general practice. Often GPs say to me, if a practice nurse goes off sick, I've had it. I can't replace them because we don't have that knowledge within us as GPs. It's all the long-term condition reviews. So all the COPD, the asthma, the diabetes. We do lots of wound care, we do smears, we do lots of preventative work, we do contraception, health promotion, education, looking after the whole family. So I find it's a real privilege to be a practice nurse because you're looking after somebody from, you know, their babies right until end of life. So the whole spectrum of life. When I worked as a nurse in intensive care, I looked after people when they were acutely ill. And I remember looking after a lady once who was asthmatic. She was a young lady and she had no other problems, but she was asthmatic and she'd ended up in intensive care because of her poorly controlled asthma. And I remember thinking to myself, if only I could have worked with her earlier on in this pathway, she may never have had to end up in intensive care. And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to come and work in general practice, because you have the ability to walk alongside people and to influence and to educate and to help them to manage their conditions so that they don't have to end up in secondary care. So lots of things about general practice nurse, but yes, it is an exciting role. There's lots of opportunity to progress. From a general practice nurse, you could be you do your prescribing, become an expert in a certain area, and you could do your ACP. Lots of leadership, education. So the next slide just gives you a little bit of an overview of some of those areas I've been talking about. And then I'll talk to you a little bit more about how do you apply for a job as a practice nurse, which is, of course, the bit that people are interested in. Interestingly, general practices are all their own businesses. So each general practice is a different business, and it's very different from working in secondary care where, you know, there's one pay scale, one agenda for change, everybody's on the same page and it's all quite transparent in that way, and it's easy to know how to apply for jobs. Whereas in general practice, you have to think outside of the box because each general practice is a different business. So yes, jobs are advertised on NHS Jobs. They're also advertised on an Indeed website. Sometimes they're on the practice website, sometimes in the local bulletins or the local medical council bulletins, or it's even word of mouth. Your training hub, they are a good source of knowing if there's jobs as well. Often practices come to me directly and say, do you know of any nurses looking for jobs? So there's lots of different ways of looking for jobs as a practice nurse. Most jobs say you need to be experienced. Most jobs say experience needed, long-term conditions essential, those kind of things. I would say apply anyway. Often a general practice is a smaller setups. So what really counts is what you are like as a person. And if they think that you're going to be a good fit within the team, training can always be given, but you can't it's a personality of somebody, and a fit within the team is really essential, especially in a small team like a general practice. So so apply anyway. And a little bit of advice about completing your application form. So as we've talked, they're advertised in different ways. Make sure that you complete the application that they're asking for. So are they asking for a CV? In which case, make sure your CV is very up to date and relevant, and send them that along with a covering letter. Lots of places don't ask for that. Are they asking you to apply through NHS Jobs? And in which case, make sure you apply through that. Make your experience relevant to general practice. So we are aware in general practice that not everyone can get a placement in general practice. So but if you can make your experience translatable and applicable to general practice, that is a really good and really relevant way of doing things. So, or it may be that you've had a family member who has had an experience of a general practice nurse, and you've been inspired to go into general practice because of that. Say why. Why do you want to work in general practice as opposed to working in hospital or the community? It's a completely different ball game from working on a ward. So why general practice? And why not the community? You know, what's the difference between general practice and working in the community? You know, really do your research and know your stuff. And what do you know about the practice you're applying to? So sometimes we get very generically filled out application forms, and they're just discarded. We want to know why you want to work in that specific general practice. What's the patient population like? You know, where is it situated? Why do you want to work there? And just some basic things around good English and good grammar. Check, recheck your application form. Make sure it's answering the questions. Be very careful of your use of AI. It's so easy to spot. I would say use it to give a good structure, but really make sure that you don't use it to complete your application form for you. And apply on time as well. One of the things in general practice is we really like is love people to show that going the extra mile and ask to come and have an informal visit before you come and have your normal interview. Okay, so that's a really good tip to think. If you want to go and find out about that general practice, ask the person on the application form, wherever it's been applied, please could I come and have a little look around? And be aware that when you go for that informal visit, it's not really that informal. They're assessing you, you're assessing them, you're thinking, am I a good fit in this practice? They're thinking, could we see ourselves working with them? So that when you come to have your interview, already a lot of the working out has been done before. If they ask you for an interview, it's because they're thinking, yeah, this could potentially be somebody who we might want to invest in, get trained up to then come and work with us. Preparing for interview, for a general practice nurse interview. Some of this is irrelevant for all, but I think especially I'm talking for general practice. We talked about informal visits. When I had my interview for a general practice nursing, I had an informal visit. I went around and they said, oh, these are all the nurses, and they were all sitting having their lunch. And I said hello to them and have a bit of a chat with them. And I was offered the job, and they said to me, do you know that when you came and you put your head around the door and you talked to us, they asked us afterwards what we thought, would we be able to work with you? And it was an informal visit, but actually if we'd said no, don't think she would fit into the team, they wouldn't have offered you a job. So have a think about all those, have a think about that. Make sure that you can where the practice is, make sure you know if there's parking there. And especially scope out, I've put it in bold, what training is available for you to be trained up to be a practice nurse within your area. So after this, Paul's going to share with you some links to the different training hubs that are situated throughout the whole of the north of England. And contact your training hub and ask what is available for the training for the practice nurses within your area. And if you got a job in general practice, how could you get onto that course? Okay, you then need to be able to talk to that when you go into interviews. So they say, well, you haven't got any qualifications. What they don't presume that the practice will know, is what I'm trying to say. They do your homework, and then you can go to them and say, I'm aware that there's this 1-year training program in South Yorkshire that I could get onto if I got a job in general practice. So you're a step ahead of the game. Okay. At the interview, obviously, dress smartly, look professional, body language is absolutely key, shake hands, be aware that the people across the desk are the people who you're going to be working with. So you never want to make enemies. So even if you don't get the interview, you always want to remain professional, because they may well recommend you to the practice down the road and say, we didn't manage to employ her, but the practice down the road may be able to give them a job. Okay. I'm going to have some questions as well to ask them. If you're successful, that's the time when you discuss your salary and your terms and conditions. In general practice, it's quite rare to be on an agenda for change. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but most general practices will have their own salary scales, their own pay. You may be paid differently to the nurse who's in the next room from you, and most definitely from the practice who's down the road. Salary isn't everything. Terms and conditions are really important as well. So how much sick pay, maternity pay you get. You can often negotiate quite well, but it is expected that there is a little bit of flexibility there for some conversation to happen. Okay, you can talk about your working hours and your days as well. Okay, and like I said, if you're not successful, just be aware that you may be recommended to another practice down the road, and that's happened quite recently for a nurse who wasn't successful in one practice. The practice down the road then gave her a job. Okay, and there's just, I keep saying we have men who are practice nurses as well, and we're really keen on recruiting more males into practice nursing. It's predominantly female at the moment, but there's a real emphasis on men's health, and men are very welcome into this space. Okay, so I've just done that quick 10-minute presentation for you, and I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and I've got 5 minutes, I think, for some questions. I can see that Leslie has got her hand up. So Leslie, do you want to come in first?
Yeah, sorry, I'm Leslie Young. I'm one of the senior nursing and midwifery workforce leads at NHS England, work closely with Emma. I've just put in the chat the link to the CNO002 module, which is available for everyone to access, and it's called Discovering a Nursing Career in General Practice. And we have 3 universities that deliver it across the northeastern Yorkshire. Some are purely online learning, some are blended, and some are face-to-face. So have a look at those 3 universities, because a lot of people have found this really helpful. So it's that introduction into what is general practice, and it can then support you with your application, as Emma's just said. So, and it's free to access. You can do non-accredited, you can do accredited, but you know, it is there for everyone to access. Nursing associate students, registered nursing students, and registered nurses and nursing associates.
Thank you, Leslie. And I think when we're talking about going the extra mile, it's things like that that really count. If you've managed to do that module as discovering a career in general practice, that's really showing that you're interested in it. You might not have been able to have a placement in general practice, but you're interested in general practice, and it gives you a good foundation. As a training hub, we deliver that for Sheffield Hallam University, so we deliver those sessions for the student nurses. And yeah, it's always very well received. So I would encourage you, if you have got some time, to look at accessing that.
Cheers, Leslie, and Leslie's answered a bit of that question already anyway, Emma, but there's a quick question there in the chat box saying, can you do the GPN's training before even applying for the job, or do you do it after getting an interview and the job? So I don't know if there's a bit more you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, sure. So there in the past, when finances were a little bit different, some of the training hubs offered a certain number of contracts for newly qualified nurses, 1-year fixed term contracts for newly qualified nurses to come and do the training on a 1-year fixed term contract, and then after that contract finished, they would then get a job as a practice nurse. Those contracts, I'm not sure what's happening across the region with those contracts. I know in South Yorkshire it's looking very doubtful that we'll have any of those contracts for the October cohort of VTS nurses. So my main message would be, try to get a job as a practice nurse in a surgery, because then you're much more likely to get onto the training. So if you were to get a job in South Yorkshire as a practice nurse in a surgery, we do have places in October that you'll be able to come on for the 1-year training programme. But to have a separate contract, 1-year fixed term contract, they were funded more centrally now, though those aren't, that's not the case really anymore. So I think the best bet is to get a job as a practice nurse and then come on to the programme.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Emma. Really appreciate your time to come and chat about primary care today. If there is anybody else that's going to pop in any other questions, we'll pick them up at the end. Emma, if you're not able to stay, don't worry, we'll get any other questions that are specific over to you at the end if you do need to shoot off, but thank you so much. I'm going to move on next to our other guest speaker, who's Chloe Haig from Spectrum Community Health CIC. Chloe, are you able to log in? We had a few tech issues to start you off as a presenter.
I am. I think.
Fantastic.
Can you hear me, Paul?
I can indeed. Thank you very much. I'll run the slides up on the screen for you, Chloe. So if you you go ahead and present, and if you just let me know when you want to pop to the next slide.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. It's really lovely to meet you, everyone. My name's Chloe Haig, and I'm Deputy Director of Nursing and Quality at Spectrum. I wouldn't normally come along and give talks about being a newly qualified nurse, but actually I've just finished, I guess, doing my preceptorship and introduction into nursing in Spectrum myself. I think it was really important when I first started this job and started working in a prison that I really spent some time on site understanding what it is that our nurses deliver. I've worked with a couple of people on this call before. My background is cardiology. When I worked in the Acute Hospital Trust, I then went from safeguarding nursing into primary care, and then from primary care I worked at NHS England, and this is a step in a different direction, so I've been learning lots of new things. Paul, do you want to go on the next slide for me? Apologies, I'm just going to make sure my emails don't ping up whilst I'm talking. I seem to be quite popular today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Spectrum and also, I guess, give you a bit of reassurance. I qualified in January 2007, and when I qualified, I was in a very similar position to you. I think healthcare changes a lot, and I live in York. My first job that I actually managed to get was in Airedale, which was a really long commute. I did end up getting a job in York, but I just want to give you some reassurance that hopefully things will change soon, and I'm sure you guys will all have fantastic first roles wherever it is that you choose to go. So I'm going to tell you a bit about Spectrum and health and justice nursing. So Spectrum, we're a community health company, so we deliver a whole range of across different services, including across health and justice, and that's in North East and North Cumbria, and also across Yorkshire and Humber, and also in the North West. And what we do on paper is we deliver primary care services across those two regions. And why we're called a community interest company is because we're a not-for-profit organisation. So we're a little bit different to some of the other places that deliver. I'm really sorry. Can you guys hear the drilling that's just started outside my house? I'm just going to shut my door. Sorry, that was really putting me off. So because we're a not-for-profit organisation, we put any money that we may well make back into the organisation to make sure that the people who we're treating, that they deliver and get different elements of care. So it's ploughed back into different local projects, and that's something that's really important to us. And it allows us to make sure that the people who we support have that care and that support when they get back into the community, and that it's personalised and effective. And I think from me, and what I've recently sort of realised is that nursing within prisons is really varied and complex, and it offers everyone the opportunity to develop a really kind of wide range of nursing and advanced skills. When you first start having the conversation with someone about working within prison nursing, they talk about working in primary care, but there's lots of different layers to it as well, and there's lots of different opportunities to develop new skills. It is challenging. I must admit that the first time I walked into a prison, I wasn't quite sure, but actually I kind of looked at the teams that were working around me and how they were delivering the care, and it's an incredibly rewarding job. what happens is when people come into prisons initially, they have a reception assessment and screening. And what I realised is that this was the opportunity to work with a group of people who were incredibly vulnerable. And it really gives you the opportunity to change someone's life for the better. And working in the Justice Centre really kind of shows you how people's lives, the life that you're born into, can really significantly affect the chances that you have in life and the opportunities to do different things, and how health and kind of that health promotion element and accessing healthcare is really different to different people. So we really are working with some of the most vulnerable people. And in our sites, we provide lots of different care. So that's primary care, which Emma's been talking a bit about. So we've got nurses, GPs, we've also got people working in sexual health, we've got large teams working in substance misuse, and then we also work alongside our allied health professionals, and really to kind of try and deliver whatever is needed within that prison setting. So we're working across the patient's physical and mental health, and looking at how we can support those patients to continue accessing the right healthcare and services when they move back and return into the community. Nurses within the health and justice settings, we're the kind of first point of care. A lot of these people have not necessarily engaged with care within the community. So we often are the first groups of people who support them with that opportunity to address long-term health conditions, kind of routine immunisations, vaccination, screening. And our aim, I guess, is that by the time that they leave us, they're in a stronger position than they were when they first came in. The culture that we have, and whenever we talk to our staff, it's about making care accessible to our patients. So the skills and expertise of our workforce is really that flexibility and wanting to work with vulnerable people to give them the support and treatment that they need. So we always put patients at the heart of what we do. People often ask us that question, saying, well, what do we call them? So for us as healthcare professionals, that prison is their home. So we're going into their home, and we're really trying to put them at the heart of everything that we do. So a lot of the time when a patient comes in through the reception process, these are people who often may not have had the opportunity or have been excluded from school. So immediately you start picking up things around supporting people in different ways and making sure that people who haven't got the skills that we necessarily would have to be able to read through lots of information, we have to make it accessible. And I think once I got over the initial, I guess, new environment, the different ways of working, I always find it whenever I go on site and meet people, I find it so rewarding, because these people are some of the most vulnerable people that you will meet. Spectrum, we are a relatively sort of middle-sized provider. So if you guys are out there and you're kind of looking for jobs within health and justice, or you think what I'm saying, wow, that's really important, I'd like the opportunity to go and have a look around, there are different providers depending where you are and which area that you are in. A lot of them are registered on NHS jobs, but I guess even though I probably would normally in any other forum get shut down for saying this, we also have Patient Plus Group, PPG. They're one of the really big providers across the northeast region, so they're worthwhile having a look out to see what kind of roles that they've got available there. Next one, please, Paul. So we are the second largest prison healthcare provider. I've talked to you about reception. So this is, I guess, if you put it for you guys who have worked in hospitals, this is your admission. So this is when people come in and you're saying, hi, I'm Chloe. This person is coming in. As you can imagine, this can be an incredibly stressful and upsetting time for people. But also we do have kind of continuous rotating patients who are coming in and have been there before. Emergency response. So when you work within a health and justice setting, once you've gone through your preceptorship, so this isn't something that we would expect a newly qualified person to do, we are delivering a service in a prison. So we work really closely with the prison officers and the staff across site, and ultimately we provide the emergency response. There's only two. There's code red, there's code blue, And actually, what I'll do is I'll put some links in online. There's some modules on eLearning for Health that you guys can have a look through, and that'll kind of familiarise. It's a different language, a bit like when you go into different wards, and all of a sudden you're. I guess to give you a prime example, acronyms are a joy. UTI in prison language isn't a urinary tract infection, it's under the influence. There is a lot of issues with groups of people around sort of substance misuse and that use in prison settings. So acronyms are one of the kind of things that when you start a new job get you down. Health promotion is massive for us. We work really closely with our local health promotion teams, the regional health promotion teams, and the national health promotion teams. It's really high on our agenda to ensure that whilst people are in detained estates, that we try and support them to access things that they wouldn't necessarily access in the community. Long-term condition management. We train up a lot of our staff. We generally have people who work within the primary care settings who do things like long-term condition management clinics, wound care management clinics, as they would if they worked in a community general practice setting. And then we have things like inpatients. This isn't where we deliver hospital care. Again, the language is quite different. This is where we have patients who, if they were in the community, they would receive social care support. So as in the rest of the country, it's an ageing population. Working in detained estates, I guess one other thing as well is you'll often see that there might be really old Victorian style buildings. So when it comes to things like accessibility, we have to have these units for people who may be older, may have mobility needs, may have healthcare needs where they just need that slightly higher level of care. We absolutely certainly wouldn't be giving out things like IV medication or having the same kind of things that you would have on a hospital unit. And then we also have things like care and separation units. Unfortunately, a lot of those people, it's quite different to primary care when you look at the demographics of your population. So you'd probably say, you know, in community, you have about 20% of people with mental health problems. You can flip that on its head in detained estates and you're looking at 80% of people. So we often have really vulnerable people who do require intensive support, and we work really closely. We work alongside, so say for example, Humber, one of our prisons, or Durham, our mental health care providers, we work alongside TUV and they come in and they deliver the mental health services within prisons. So if we have got mental health nurses on the call, it's another element for you guys to think about as well. Next one, Paul. So within the Spectrum organisation, we also have in Barnsley and Wakefield, we have some sexual health services, and they work across those areas to kind of reduce rates of teenage pregnancy and support people with sexual health resilience. The nurse-led, we have got some specialist nurses, and we also have non-medical prescribers. At Spectrum, what we have managed to do now, we work with Teesside University, and there is actually introduced from September of this year a specialist qualification for nurses. So our nurses do come in as newly qualified, and then a bit like Hospital Trust, we have now got that pipeline to be able to support people if they want to, from being newly qualified nurses to doing your specialist qualification, to doing your non-medical prescribing. We've got and we've also got ACPs training across the Spectrum organisation as well. So there's lots of different opportunities within health and justice. Sometimes people choose to specialise and they go into substance misuse roles, drugs and alcohol teams. There's a real variety working across the nursing teams in Spectrum. Next one, Paul. Community substance misuse teams. So this is to really sort of like promote when we talk about community-based care and continuity of care. So we have community substance misuse teams. So when people are released from detained estates, or if people are at risk, we have specialist teams who work in the community supporting with substance misuse. Next one. We have got a GP practice. Our GP practice, we do have newly qualified nurses who have worked there, and a bit like the ones that Emma talked about, so I won't go through, they provide as what would any other GP practice in the community. So we've got those, and then even though we've got like our 2 main offices, and even though we sit across the northeast and northwest, our 2 main offices, we've got Navigation Walk, which is in Wakefield, and then we've also got an office up in Darlington as well. These are the kind of places where we deliver training sessions for our staff. So if you've signed up for your BLS or you're moving and handling, all those kind of face-to-face ones, they're the 2 points that we book our training in. Next one. Preceptorship. So because we have had newly qualified nurses coming in more recently, we now have a preceptorship supportive programme for newly qualified nurses coming in, which makes sure that we have people sort of supernumerary as they're first coming in, allocated preceptors, we've got workbooks, 14 prisons across the 2 regions, and as I've said, 2 sexual health services in Barnsley and Wakefield, and then 3 drug and alcohol community services that sit up in the northeast around the Durham area. Next one. Any questions? I hope I wasn't talking too quickly then. I was kind of mindful of the time, Paul.
Oh no, thank you so much, Chloe. That's fantastic overview there of what Spectrum can offer and the amazing work that you do all over our region as well. I've just been keeping an eye in the chat. There's a few questions for you.
Okay.
I'll not mention names, obviously, for data protection for the recording of this webinar. One attendee has said, you've already answered this anyway, about saying, I know you mentioned these options for mental health nurses within Spectrum, the work you do. I didn't know if there was any, I just thought I'd highlight that in case there was anything else you wanted to add about that.
Yes, right, so let me have a look at these. So it is suitable for mental health nurses too, depending on what prison setting it is and which role it is that you're applying for and who you're working for. So again, PPG, so Practice Plus Group, who also work across the northeast and Yorkshire, they have an inbuilt team, so the mental health nurses are included in their team. Whereas for us at Spectrum, we generally work with our local providers. So for us, it would be CHUV, CNTW, so Cumbria, Northumbria, Tyne and Wear, so they're kind of like a bit further up with Northumberland. So it absolutely is suitable for mental health nurses. When you've not had a placement in prison settings, are you given the opportunity as a newly qualified to work there? Yes, we've got lots of newly qualified nurses who are coming through. I think a bit like Emma said before, when we meet people at interviews, a lot of the time it's about the person, and if people really kind of have that passion, especially about working with vulnerable people, that's great. Again, like Emma said, we absolutely will always offer people site visits. If my colleague Susie was here today, she'd probably say that prison health is like Marmite nursing. It's something that it's either for you or it's not for you. But I think that's the same across all nursing. I remember being a student nurse thinking that some of the things that I absolutely loved, like A&E, I thought I'd hate it, and I loved it. I think it's just having the opportunity to do it. So if people do really kind of think, I'd really like to go and have a look around, that's something that we can organise as well. And the final one, maybe, what does it say when it means prison cleared? So prison cleared, when you have your DBS done as a nurse, what we do if you're working in a prison is the prison requires for you to have something called CTC clearance, which is your counter-terrorism clearance, and that's because you're working in a high-risk area. So they run that alongside us doing our DBS. Yes, we have lots of people working flexible hours. Some sites work long days. Some people choose to work long days, weekends, evenings. It's depending on what site it is. Some sites don't have 24-hour care. Some sites do have 24-hour care. So it is possible to work on different days. Can you get a prison clearance before getting a job? No. Because this runs alongside your employment offer, because we're ultimately in any prison site, in any detained estate that you work in, you have to have that alongside your job offer. Do you have any current vacancies for preceptorships? Yes, there are jobs at the moment. You can go onto our Spectrum website, and like I said, in any other forum, I wouldn't necessarily promote it, but also have a look at PPG, so Patient Plus Group, because they're our, I guess, sort of calling them a joint, but when we haven't got the estate across the North East and Yorkshire, it will sit with them. So actually the area sort of, we have quite a few. We've got Hull and Humber, we've got and quite a few around Durham, Frankland area, whereas PPG have got the sites across Leeds, Wakefield, Doncaster, that kind of Yorkshire and Humber. If it isn't Hull and Humber, it's PPG. So hopefully that's helpful. And I've put the e-learning for health link in, because I would say before you even start going and asking questions, just have a look at that kind of support for people in prison healthcare.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Chloe. And yeah, for those asking information about job vacancies and preceptorships and the like as well, we're going to provide you after this session with all of these presentations and additional resources as well. They'll have links on a Patient Plus group and the e-learning for health resources as well, so we'll make sure you get all of that as well. Just a very quick one, I'm going to move on now to introduce Nicola for Skills for Care. Just a really quick one, because I've noticed quite a lot of people are sort of joining in quite late. Apologies if there's been any issues with you joining, or you've just been really busy and you've not been able to join straight away. This is being recorded, so anything you've missed we will make sure that you get, and we'll give options for you to ask any questions at a later date. We'll make sure our Nursing North email address is in there, so if there's anything you want to send across to any of the presenters at a later date, we'll give you option for that as well. Thanks again, Chloe, and we shall now move on to introduce Nicola from Skills for Care.
Thank you, Paul. So my name's Nicola Greenwood, and I am a locality manager for the Yorkshire and Humber area of Skills for Care. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes or so just talking to you about what social care is, and trying to dispel some of the myths of social care that might help you in determining whether social care is an avenue that you wish to explore. Next slide, please, Paul. Thank you. So why social care? Well, it is something that we as a society will either now or in the future touch on. So you may well have a loved one that is accessing social care at the moment, or in time you may need social care yourself. So it is something that touches every single part of our lives in one way or another, and it affects people across the age ranges. Whilst we do have an older society, there is a need for social care across the age range of our community. Next slide, please, Paul. So what do we mean by social care? Social care is about the support, health and care that we need to live our best lives, typically as we get older, but not exclusively. For some people, we will need ongoing nursing care for conditions which don't require hospital admission, but we are not able to manage that independently. Oh, there, we're back in the right place, that's fine. Social care nursing allows people to continue to live the life that they want to live, whether that's in their own home or whether that's in a different permanent residence. Next slide, please, Paul. Social care is often defined by the type of care that is provided or the funding source that supports it, but it is perhaps better to define it as where we talk about a model of care, a social model of care that registered nurses and nursing associates can affiliate to. Examples of nursing in social care may include residential care, day care, complex home care, and may be delivered through private or voluntary organisations or aligned to faith communities or charities, and may meet the needs of specific people or institutions, for example, prisons, like you've just heard from Chloe, or from our local hospices. Social care nurses are dedicated, delivering person-centred, strength-based and collaborative care in partnership with the individual and their families. You develop medium to long-term relationships with people who receive care to help promote their well-being and their independence. preventing illness and prioritising their safety and patient choice. You will enhance their quality of life. You will deal with a whole range of complex and long-term conditions, and you'll be able to use your professional autonomy and clinical decision-making and a high level of clinical skill. You will be able to lead a team. You will work with a whole range of multidisciplinary individuals, GP practices, district nurses, secondary care colleagues, allied health professionals, as well as the voluntary sector in a role in social care. And you will be responsible in part for organising and managing service delivery along with your colleagues within the care sector. Next slide, please, Paul. So you may ask, where do social care, where do nurses and nursing associates work within social care? And on the right-hand side of the screen here, you will see a whole range of organisations, the logos you may well have seen before, that offer social care. But they are just a small percentage of the range of social care provision where nurses work. I've taken a snapshot this morning, and there are 372 nursing homes in the Yorkshire and Humber area, 245 in the North East and 32 in Cumbria. That's 650 nursing home providers that are within our local community, that are that need nurses to support the services that deliver. But as I've mentioned earlier, not all nurses are employed within a nursing home. We have them working within other aspects of social care too. But many of the providers that deliver social care are the smaller independent businesses rather than the big providers such as Barchester or Exemplar Healthcare that you can see on the screen. Oh, next slide, please. As I've mentioned, we've got community care services, the home care, the domiciliary care. We've got the nursing homes, the residential care homes with nursing that have a range of specialisms from mental health, learning disability, complex needs, dementia, end of life. We have day centres and other community-based services, and we have the charity sector. Thanks, Paul. So what nursing roles are there in social care? Well, there is a registered nurse, and in the role of a registered nurse, you can progress to a clinical lead, a deputy manager, a registered manager. You may well become a day centre lead, you may well do research, but there are also other roles that are really vital to the quality of care that is delivered within the care sector: learning and development, strategic roles, quality assurance and compliance. You could even progress to the role of being a director within social care. None of this is beyond the reach of a nurse within the care sector. Next slide, please, Paul. Is it a long-term career option? Well, of course, I would say yes, wouldn't I? That is my role. But actually, the workforce strategy for Social Care England, which you can scan to read, really does set out that nursing is an essential and valuable component of social care. And we have Skills for Care. We have worked with partners to create a strategy for the long term. This isn't a strategy for the here and now. It is to take us 10 to 15 years into the future, and nursing is a significant part of that strategy. And if we just continue to the next slide, some of the facts that are outlined in the strategy is that we are expected to have around a 32% increase in the number of people that are aged 65 and above. That will increase the demand for social care. The number of people with dementia is sadly expected to rise by 43% by 2040, from now around 980,000 to 1.4 million people needing dementia support in the next 15 years. The number of people aged 18 to 64 with learning disabilities, mental health need or a physical disability is projected to increase. And by the time a person is 75, they are 60% more likely to possess 2 or more significant conditions. This increases to 75% for those that are in the 85 to 89 age bracket. Some significant work that has been done to project the growth of social care in the next 15 years suggests that we will need an extra 540,000 new posts working within social care. Not all of that will be nurses, but there is a large proportion of that is nursing workforce. So we are expecting that the nursing workforce will continue to be a really important part of the adult social care provision. Next slide, please, Paul. So I can see it flashed up on my screen, and to answer this, yes, there is preceptorship within social care. It has increased the number of providers that deliver preceptorship now within social care is increasing all of the time, and within that you will receive supernumerary time, you'll be allocated a preceptor, much like the preceptorship programs that are offered currently within the NHS and within the prison service that you'll have heard previously. So the myth that you will have that it is only available in the NHS is incorrect. Moving on then to revalidation, we have heard nurses say, well, I can't work in social care because it won't give me sufficient scope of practice to meet my revalidation requirements. We can absolutely dispel that myth in that working within social care environment will absolutely enable you to meet those requirements within your scope of practice and your practice hours to be able to achieve revalidation, and our colleagues at the NMC would absolutely support that as well. Moving on, because I'm aware we're running out of time, and this is perhaps the most important question for you, which is where then you can find a job. Much like what Emma was talking about and what Chloe's talked about, is that social care providers are individual employers, and as such there is no one-stop shop where you can find all of the jobs with social care like you can on the NHS jobs platform. But there are a few areas where social care providers do collectively come to advertise their jobs. Care Home UK, Indeed, the government's Find a Job website, and also Total Jobs. But one thing I would recommend that you do, if social care is of interest to you, is just look around your local community. What nursing homes do you have in your local community? Make contact with them, have conversations with them to see what job opportunities that they have, because some providers use words of mouth, their local community, to recruit. When you're driving around, have a look at what's around. Look at, go on and Google nursing jobs near me, and you will find a list of providers that are recruiting. Look on Facebook on nursing home pages. Look in LinkedIn as well, and they are, and you will find there numerous opportunities for you to access jobs. If we slip on two slides now, Paul, if that's possible, click on the next one. So what do nurses say about working in social care? Well, here's just a few quotes that have come from people that are working in social care at the moment. So if we look on the right-hand side, Simon, he tells us that I to see the residents I look after improve when they are admitted to the home by ensuring that they have full dignity and respect at the end of their lives. That's why he does the job. Getting feedback from families. and the wider healthcare system is always a highlight to help be responsive to people's hopes for their care. That's Itea, who's a register manager and is a mental health registered nurse. There are a few others on there, and because of time, I'm not going to read them through, but when this slide deck is shared with you, you will be able to have an opportunity to look at them then. Moving on, Paul. We also have through Skills for Care, we massively promote and support our nursing community. So we have a number of networks and newsletters that you can receive as nurses, and forums where you can join the nursing community within social care. We really want to invest and support the nursing workforce. So that's something that you can now, through the contacts that Paul will give you, if anybody wants to join those newsletters and those communities and receive those newsletters, we can facilitate that for you. I think that's the end, Paul. So if anybody has any questions, I see somewhere in the chat that they have tried. I can't, let me just pop onto the chat. Just sliding down. So nursing homes asking for 2-year experience. Well, you know, because they are independent businesses. You know, there are some, and I won't deny it, that do ask for experience. We are seeing an increasing number of care providers that are offering new posts to newly qualified nurses. So I would continue to look, ask for what their arrangements are for preceptorship, and ask them and keep looking, because there are jobs out there where providers will take newly qualified.
Brilliant, thanks, Nicola. There was one other very quick one that I picked up on there as well. Somebody's asked for any tips about they're not seeing any preceptorship opportunities coming up for mental health. Have you any advice or tips for social care for that?
I need to understand a few more specifics about that, because preceptorship is based on it. The preceptorship is based on the employer and supporting the where you're working. So it does depend on the environment that you're working in as to what the type of preceptorship you will receive. So if you're working in a specialist dementia home, then you would receive a different kind of preceptorship to somebody that didn't specialize in dementia. So it does all depend on where you're, you know, where you're going to work.
Yeah, cheers for that, Nicola. I thought that might be the case, but yeah, basically the person who's put that question in, if you want to elaborate a bit more, we can pick that up sort of later on and chat a bit more about that as well. Brilliant, thanks so much for that, Nicola. We're going to move on now to introduce Ruth from Royal College of Nursing Careers.
Hello.
There we go, Ruth. I will hand you over now.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here. My name's Ruth Jones, and I work for the RCN Career Service. I've been there about 10 years now. And a big part of my job is actually checking and giving feedback on CVs and job applications. I've marked over about 1,000, so hopefully by now I've kind of seen it all. We could just go into the next slide, Paul. I've only got 10 minutes today, and I think we're a bit pushed for time anyway, so I'm going to whiz through, and there's so much I would love to share with you. So many tips I could give you, but I'm going to try and concentrate on what the RCN resources, what RCN resources are there to help you in your career. And if you want to know more about anything that I touch upon today, it's all on the website in way more detail, and that's rcn.org.uk/careers. And you can always email me at the end as well if you have any questions that aren't covered today. Thanks, Paul. Next slide. So I thought, let's just concentrate on some of the most important top tips I can give you in job hunting and career searching. Next slide. So first of all, your CV. And Emma talked about CVs earlier, luckily, so I don't have to go into so much detail. But I think something you can do now is start preparing your CV now. You know, don't wait until you're at that point where you're applying for jobs. Go online to the RCM website, have a look at the CV writing guidance, have a look at the CV samples. We've got a sample CV that is for newly qualified nurses who are just going to apply for their first job. And it shows you how to set out, you know, your placement history and that sort of thing. So draft your first CV now and use our CV tracking service if you want. Obviously, you won't be able to tailor your CV just yet. But if you just want a little bit of initial advice, that's absolutely fine. And RCM members that can get that service for free. Next slide, please. The most important CV tips I could give you would be to stick to 2 sides of A4. A CV should be a snapshot of your career, not an entire, you know, list or autobiography. So it's a relevant snapshot. Second piece of advice, which is so important, and I think this has been touched upon already, is to always tailor your CV to the job advert. And this is where people fall down, because they write a one-size-fits-all CV and they send that off to lots of employers. If you fancy, after today's webinar, applying for Spectrum, and you're also thinking maybe general practice and maybe also a nursing home, realistically, you should have 3 completely different CVs, because they're completely different jobs. And those employers will be interested in slightly different skills and experience that you have. So always tailor your CV. You know, and ask yourself, what is appealing, relevant, useful, or impressive to this particular employer who I'm sending my CV to? The next slide, please. There are different methods of application, and so it's always going to depend on the employer. If you're applying for jobs in the NHS and a lot of larger private sector hospitals, they will ask you for a supporting statement, and they would place more value on that than the CV. So don't wait until you're applying for jobs to figure out how to write a supporting statement. It's not entirely intuitive, and it is very easy to get the technique wrong. There's very specific technique. So learn that now, familiarize yourself with that now. In every time you write a supporting statement to say to the employer why you think you should get the job, it's going to have to follow the person specification and be relevant to the job description. So go on job sites now, whether it be applying for private sector or NHS, go online and have a look at how job adverts look and where you find the person spec, and sort of where within the person specification the essential criteria sits, because that's what you're going to be needing as sort of your backbone of your structure. It's like a wish list or a checklist. Again, we have so much online advice about supporting statements, which go into the technique in way more detail. We've got samples, we've got tutorials. We also offer a statement checking service. So again, take use of that. If you don't have to write a supporting statement, you might be asked to write a CV and a covering letter. And again, we can offer feedback on those and have advice online about that as well. Next slide, please, Paul. The most important statement tips I can give you, and this applies to covering letters as well. I think Emma touched upon this earlier as well. Include an introduction. Employers want to see why you're applying. What's your motivation? Because they want to check that you're applying for the right reason. And in an ideal world, they'll want to get the feeling that you really cherry-picked this job. You're not just applying for lots of jobs and hoping you'll get lucky. You really picked this particular field because you have a passion or an interest, or you have experience in it. So, you know, say why you're applying and try and excite the employer. You know, say something to kind of hook them in and make sure you're sort of demonstrating that you know that this is what you want to do. Employers would much rather employ people with a genuine interest in their field. Again, address all essential criteria from the person spec, not some. You need to be addressing every single one, and showing that you've researched the job, and you want to be using relevant real life examples within your statement. And this is known as the CAR technique. I'm going to show you really briefly how to do this. Next slide, please, Paul. So CAR stands for context, action, results. So let's say that you are applying for a job and one of the essential criteria is working within the MDT. The employer doesn't want to hear statements or claims such as, oh yeah, I've worked with the MDT loads and I'm really good at working within the MDT. I have lots of experience working in the MDT. They want context and they want to see your skills in action. So this is how to set it out to make sure that you do that. So the context would be something like, on placement, I worked within the MDT, attending meetings with psychologists, psychiatric nurses, and social workers. So see, they've provided some context who within the MDT they've been working for. So we'll assume in this example that this person is working, applying for a job within mental health. So action, what was your part? What was your role? I contributed by sharing observations on a patient's mental state, engagement in activities, and response to medication. And then finally, the results. My input helped inform care planning, guiding changes to the patient's routine that improved their well-being. Now, if you use this technique when writing supporting statements, it'll really set you up. So again, start practicing this now. And if you want to do sort of a mock application in response to a specific job and you want feedback on that to check you're on the right track, that's no problem at all. Next slide, please, Paul. Interviews. Again, start preparing now, get interview ready now. We've got online resources, sample questions, so you can get a feel for what kind of questions you'll be asked. We do webinars quite frequently, so keep an eye out for those on our website. And we also offer interview coaching. This is one-on-one telephone interview coaching with the RCN career coaches. So I think that is a really, really good offer. And you would send us the job spec for the exact post you're applying for, and your interview coaching would be tailored to that. In interviews, there's something called the STAR technique. You might have heard of this before. So start thinking about your STAR examples. So very quickly, that's situation, task, action, results, a little bit like the CAR. We could go into the next one. Well, so this is an example. How do you prioritize your workloads? So you'd set the scene. On placement in respiratory care, I was once supporting a nurse with multiple patients needing interventions at once. Task, what did you need to do? I needed to ensure all patients received safe and timely care whilst managing my own delegated tasks. Action, I assessed who required urgent care first, such as administering time-critical medications, then organised routine observations and documentations around these priorities whilst communicating with my mentor. And the result, this ensured all patients received appropriate care promptly, and my mentor praised my ability to think ahead and remain calm under pressure. If this seems a little bit clunky, that's normal. But if you get used to doing these, if you practice a few, it'll sort of become second nature. But this is usually the kind of format you'll be wanting to follow at interview. Next slide, please, Paul. Let's very quickly go through some other tips to stand out. So number one is to join RCN forums. So we have lots of different forums. These are online networks pertaining to a particular field or specialism within nursing. So we've got advanced nurse practitioner forums, cancer forums, community nursing forums, general practice forums, prison forums, nursing older people forums. So join a forum that's relevant to your target job. And each forum has its own Facebook group where you can network with nurses working in that field up and down the UK and get involved in discussions, sharing best practice. If you're talking about this in your application or interview, this can look really good on you. This can make it look like you've gone the extra mile and you're committed to that field, and you can gain insight and network. Next slide. Research the role, the employer, and the values. You know, really do your research. I think this has been touched upon already. what kind of services does that employer offer? Make sure you know exactly what they're about. What news do they have? Any initiatives they've started? What are their organizational values? That's often a big one. What's their mission? What's their strategic plan or vision? If you can bring these up at application or interview, you're going to get massive bonus points. Next slide, please, Paul. Thank you. Plan and inform a visit. Again, we talked about this already. I talk to a lot of employers at job fairs, and I always ask them, what are kind of the top things that impress you about a candidate? And they always come up with this one. That they are most impressed by candidates that approach them before they apply for a job. So bear that in mind. It creates a really good impression, it breaks the ice, and you gain really important insight into the role that can help you with your application or interview and helps know if it's the right fit for you too. Next slide, Paul. And this is just some of the things that the Career Service can help with. I've gone through a lot of them already. Like I said, go online. There's so much more information on there. And you're also free to email us if you want. I think our email will be on the next slide. And that's it from me. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Ruth. And yeah, don't worry about us running over. I think it's really important to share the information that you guys can support. And I've spoken to Ruth and her colleague Julie a few times and seen some of the fantastic resources and the sessions that they offer. So it's competitive at the moment for every role. I definitely would advise picking up their advice and support. One of the quick thing I was just going to mention there as well, Ruth, I think, apologies if you did mention it and I missed it. I think for students, membership fees, £10 at the moment, is it? Yeah.
£10 or free if you're in your first year. So it's an absolute bargain.
Fantastic. Yeah, honestly, it is for the resources that they provide. So thank you so much for that, Ruth. There's a couple more questions that come through there as well that mentioned, and one I wanted to pick up. One of the attendees has mentioned a bit about getting some more information about mental health services or job searching in that field. Just to go back a few slides on your question, you mentioned about the forums, Ruth. Do you happen to know if there is a forum for mental health nursing as well?
There's a mental health forum, and each forum, as I should have mentioned this earlier, as well as having its own Facebook group, it has its own designated RCN professional lead. So you can contact the mental health lead, especially if you're kind of struggling to find what you need. And you can also go in the forum as well. These are really, really friendly spaces in Facebook, and people are, really happy to help each other. So have a look at that. And if you want help in tailoring your CV or your application to sort of a mental health setting, I can help with that as well.
Fantastic. Cheers for that, Ruth. I thought I'd pick up on that one because there's some really good information there, because a few mental health nurses have asked questions and queries around that as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it for all the questions there. I know somebody else has mentioned they were looking for a preceptorship in substance misuse. I don't know whether Chloe's still on the call and she has any advice around that one at all. Chloe's still available. I know she might have gone into another meeting. If not, we'll pick that up and see if there's any more advice we can provide. I'll add this information onto the resource sheet that we're going to send out as well. Just once again, a massive thank you for all the speakers and the fantastic information they've shared. If anybody does think of any other questions at a later date, we've put our Nursing North email address for ourselves at NHS England that have been hosting this webinar. So if you want to fire through anything else, and we can obviously share that around to any of the guest speakers and ask for some of their expert advice, or we can get back to you with the relevant advice and information. Thank you so much for your time in coming along and participating with questions today. So I think we'll end it at that point. Oh, somebody's just asked, can we go to the slide before the last one, the RCN one? Was that one with the contact details? Yeah, I'm going to send these out as well anyway, so you'll all get a copy of these with the email addresses. But there you go. That's the RCN info on there. I'll leave that one up for you guys who are wanting to note that down. But you will get sent that information. As I say, if there's any problems, you haven't received any of that, drop us a quick email and we'll make sure that you get it. Thanks very much for your time, everybody.